Snoop's house.
Remember, you had an artist named Trey D. Trey D, you put out.
With Trey D now facing criminal charges, he was presented with a decision.
Either you're going to get life, or you can take a deal for 10 years. Trey D went and took the deal for 10 years.
Suge tells that story as one about Trey D accepting what came his way with dignity, doing his time, moving forward. He tells it as a story about Snoop putting Trey D in that position in the first place, signing an artist, never paying him, and then going to law enforcement with video when that artist came back for what he was owed. There is no gray area in what that accusation means. Going to the district attorney with footage of a conflict is not something that gets debated or softened in the world these men come from. Suge does not bury it at the end of a long grievance list. He puts it at the front of the call, before the paperwork, before the money. The Trey D accusation comes first because, in Suge's thinking, it is the foundation that everything else rests on. Suge also raises the story of a bodyguard named Malik, who worked for Snoop and was facing a murder case. Suge says Malik had nothing to do with the shooting. He says he stepped in, arranged legal representation, paid for a private investigator, and covered the costs. After the case was handled, Suge says Snoop ended all contact with Malik. No calls, no money, no acknowledgement of what the man had gone through or who had helped him. He says Snoop used people until they stopped being useful and then walked away clean. The pattern Suge is constructing through these stories is the same across each one. Snoop takes what he needs, uses the people around him, and disappears when the situation changes. He signs an artist, never pays him, and gives him up to the state when things turn dangerous. He lets a bodyguard absorb a case on his behalf, funds the defense with other people's money, and then erases the man from his life once the problem is gone. Everything in the call builds toward a single sentence, the one that made people talk about this interview long after the specific accusations had been discussed.
When I come home, knock on my door, explain to me why you're not gonna run me my bread.
Suge does not call this a threat. He calls it a conversation. He tells Snoop to be ready to explain himself in person. He tells Snoop that when that day arrives, Snoop is not going to want him at his door. The paperwork problem, Death Row Records filed for bankruptcy in 2006, the end point of an unraveling that had been building since the late 1990s. The label's biggest stars had left one by one, Suge had gone to prison, and the business model the label had been built on collapsed under its own weight. What followed the bankruptcy was a slow sequence of ownership transfers and legal proceedings over the catalog that left the Death Row name technically alive but commercially invisible for the better part of 2 decades. By the time Snoop Dogg acquired Death Row Records in early 2022 from MNRK Music Group, the company had passed through the hands of several holding entities, and its commercial relevance was largely historical. The price Snoop paid for the acquisition was not made public. The announcement was everywhere. Snoop positioned the purchase as a homecoming rather than a straight business transaction. He talked about returning to an institution that had shaped him and about taking ownership of something he had been part of building. He described himself as someone uniquely placed to restore what Death Row had lost, not just commercially, but in terms of what it meant to the artists who had lived it from the inside.